Welcome in to Shot and Vip, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this football season, presented to you by our sponsor, Johnny T-Shirt. Co-hosting this, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and I'm joined by my fellow Carolina football letterman and teammate, Jeff Schoettmer. Shotman, how was your bye week? Because I have a theory that when you start your bye week with an NC State loss on a Friday, it's only up from there.
Vip, I mean, anytime NC State loses, it's always a win and a happy weekend. But look, as a fan, bye weeks are needed. I know the players need them, the coaches need them, but the fans themselves, they deserve a bye week too. It's stressful being a UNC fan, and for us to start 4-0 and have a bye week at a good time, and we get to relax and watch all the other teams win or lose, and the stress is on them. So a bye week came at the perfect time for us.
How did you kind of approach the bye week as a player and having that chance to kind of disconnect, but then also realizing that when you do come back, you do have that kind of short turnaround for another game?
Bye weeks are the best as a player. You know exactly what your schedule is going to be. You really have three tough practices, and those practices are more geared towards the younger guys. So if you're kind of an entrenched starter and a primetime player for the program, then you're really just kind of recovering that week. You're still going to keep your conditioning up and stay locked in and maybe get some extra film on the next two opponents. But it's really for the young guys to get out there and really have physical practices. So as a starter, as Drake May and Cedric Gray and those guys, they played so many snaps that bye week's great for their body and they're able to recover. It's easier on the coaches. The coaches work their ass off all year round. They're in the office 100+ hours a week, so that they get to go home and see their family and watch some college football on Friday and Saturday of the bye week. But they're back in the facility Sunday morning grinding on the next opponent. So it's kind of just a breath of fresh air for everyone in the building, because it can be some long hours in season. And I thought it came at the perfect time, and we'll kind of get into that in a minute.
Yeah, we don't have a game to talk about this week because of that open week. So we're going to kind of take a step back and look at the season as a whole for where we are so far. Carolina enters this game against Syracuse 4-0 coming off the bye. They beat South Carolina 31-17. They beat App State in double OT 40-34. They beat Minnesota 31-13, and then they win at Pitt 41-24. So a month into the season, Carolina's 4-0. If you break the season up into like a quarters type approach, pretty good quarter for Carolina. Where are you at with this team entering the Syracuse game?
In my opinion, we couldn't have scripted a better start. Minus the Tez Walker situation, this opening four games have gone exactly how I wanted them to go. And here's why. So you start with the opening game is a mutual site game on versus South Carolina, who's an SEC opponent who whooped our ass the last time we played them in the bowl game. It was a dominant showing in the prime time because we didn't really know what to expect. South Carolina had some hype coming to the offseason, and so did we, and we handled them the whole game. Then we go and we win an overtime game against App State, our rival, and we play a tight one, but we finally win an overtime game. The next game we play a Minnesota team who's got this notoriety for being this big physical Big Ten team, and we dominate them. We looked like the better team, the more physical team, the more complete team, and we beat them by 3 scores. And then we go, Pittsburgh, our fourth game, ACC opponent on the road, who we've lost to 2 out of the last 3 years, and we go completely dominate them as well. We have a good showing on the road, and they're always known as an aggressive, physical team, and Carolina's always been labeled soft in some regards, and for the big physical teams, Pittsburgh and Minnesota, we run through them and we handle our business. And the thing that I loved about it is we won each game in a different style. The opening game we won with defense. Our defensive line just completely wrecked the game. Versus App State, Hampton ran the shit out of the ball. Our run game was awesome. Versus Minnesota, Drake throws for 400 yards. And then in the Pittsburgh game, we get a big special teams play, and our defense shows out in the second half. Obviously mixing a few Drake passes and left-handed throws and left-handed touchdown throws. And look, that's 4 different ways to win a game. We're 4-0 going into bye week. We get people healthy, and now we start for the real meat of our schedule.
Yeah, I think I love that Carolina is finding different ways to win, but also you mentioned the variety of opponent. You have the SEC, the Big Ten, the in-state rival that's a lot better than a lot of people from the outside will probably give them credit for. And outside of that App State game, where a few plays make that game a lot closer than it should be, this North Carolina team has been in control for what 80% of the games we've seen, where you go into a fourth quarter and you're fairly confident you're going to win this game. And that's been a drastic change from years past, where you're going the back and forth shootout type style game, and whatever team has the ball last wins. We're really not seeing that this year. And people can kind of nitpick about things they don't like, certain play calls, how the defense starts the game, but this team come the second half is looking like a really, really solid team. And I don't think that's something that we're used to seeing for Carolina football. We're used to being in these dogfight type games. We're used to playing down to an opponent. Like in years past, that Pittsburgh team's not that good, but in years past, that Carolina team plays down to their level. Or, the Minnesota game, when Minnesota starts coming back, the Carolina team kind of goes back into their shell, plays a little scared, and then all of a sudden it's a game. It's a game in the
Mm-hmm.
fourth quarter. This team, that's the thing I love the most about this team, is that they understand like when to put their foot on somebody's neck, and they are playing, just a complete control style of football. But when you're looking at the season now, we have that part of the season gone. Carolina's 4-0. Some tough games in there: South Carolina at Minnesota and Pittsburgh. How are you breaking up the rest of the schedule and kind of projecting out how things look in the future?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you a perspective from the coach's point of view and just kind of how they look at the season, right? So from the outsider's perspective, every fan and media member thinks that coaches just look at games one game at a time, but they kind of break the season up in parts. And this season, we have the first 4 games, which were 4 really good opponents. We handle business in all 4. And then you have the bye week, so you kind of reset. So we won the first section of the season, and now we have 2 really, really good opponents in Syracuse and Miami. Okay, and then looking ahead after that, it's Georgia Tech and Virginia, who obviously we cannot overlook, but they are not good football teams. So we're looking at Syracuse and Miami right now, and I kind of want to talk about them a little bit. I think obviously we should win both games, but I don't care what the score is as long as we win. If we win both games by a point, then that checks the box. That's all I want to see out of these next 2 games. These are games where, yes, it'd be nice to blow them out, but these are just must-win games in terms of however we get it done. That's great for our program, because we go 6-0 headed into Georgia Tech and Virginia. We got something special building, and Syracuse is a good football team. They're going to be a bowl eligible team, and obviously they get beat by Clemson, pretty handily this weekend. But we cannot overlook them, and looking forward to Miami. Like if we beat Syracuse, obviously I think College Game Day should show up to Chapel Hill, mid-October, and it should be 2 undefeated teams, two top 20 teams, and it should be a great showdown. So that's kind of how they break the schedule down. And then obviously after Virginia and Georgia Tech, we got another quote unquote bye week, which is Campbell. That's a team we should win by 60 points. And then you finish the last half of the season with 3 really good teams in Duke, State, and Clemson. So that's kind of the breakdown of the season for us. And we quote unquote have 2 bye weeks, obviously, because the Campbell, look, they're just an inferior opponent. They cannot keep up with us.
Let's see what we have in Connor Harrell game.
Exactly. That's him. That's the true freshman playing. That's when all these fans want to see these other linebackers playing besides Eccles and Gray, that's the game that they go play in, you know? So we do have a very favorable schedule in terms of how it kind of breaks down. You know, we took care of business in the first quarter. So these next two games, let's go attack it. And we win those two. And then, you know, we're going to be in a great situation, you know, moving into the late half of October.
Yeah, you mentioned that stretch with UVA and Georgia Tech, and it's kind of crazy to see how down of a year both those teams are having, where Georgia Tech just lost by double digits to Bowling Green at home, and Virginia lost to James Madison earlier this year. And just the state of football in Virginia right now, where I'm pretty sure James Madison is the best program in that state right now with the direction that Virginia Tech and Virginia are both going. You mentioned the Syracuse Miami part of the schedule and how the Miami game could be a potential like look ahead spot for this North Carolina team. From your playing experience, how do you avoid that look ahead spot where you do have a really quality Syracuse team with playmakers at multiple positions, but it does just feel natural to be like, hey, we're a win away from having, and Miami has to do their part too against Georgia Tech and Haynes King, the Texas A&M transfer quarterback. But you are a week away from a potential top 15 matchup at home.
I think there's two things. One, you turn on the tape, and if you know football at all, you watch Syracuse play, and they're a damn good team. Great coach, aggressive defense. They got some skill on the offensive side of the ball. So, look, if you just watch the tape and objectively watch it, like you should be a little worried playing them because they're a really good football team. So I think that's number one. And then number two is as a competitor, which I think we have some really good competitors on our team. Look, they come off a bye week. You only get 12 opportunities to showcase your talent in college football. You work year round, 365 days for these 12 games. I'm not good at math, but what's that? You work, you know, you play less than 3% of the year. You know, you work, I don't know, Vipp, right? Tell me. You know, you're working 365 days and you have 12 opportunities. You know, that's very few opportunities for you to really step on a primetime stage and compete and support and, you know, play for your school, play for your brothers. So, and obviously coming off a bye week, we don't play this week. So, you know, our guys are going to be chomping at the bit to get back in Keenan. Great atmosphere, great weather. You know, it should be a great turnout from our fans. So I think that's the two part is turning on the film and watching how good Syracuse is. So knowing you can't take them lightly. And then, you know, we have bigger aspirations and goals this year than, you know, to beat Syracuse and Miami. We're trying to go compete for ACC championships and beyond that. So yeah, I think we have a mature team, you know, some leadership on both sides of the ball, and Coach Brown knows that this is, and I'll come out and say this may be his last best opportunity at, you know, his second stint at Carolina to really have a, you know, a really, really good season. And he knows that. So he's not going to let anything slide by.
Yeah. The Drake May aspect of everything, and not knowing if your quarterback next year is going to be at his level. It's safe to say your next quarterback is not going to be at the level of Drake May with the talent that we've seen at quarterback with May under center. And also, I think it has been cool this year to see how the ACC moves away from the two divisions and seeing how everything's going to shake out with the two teams. Like at first it felt like, you know, it was Florida State and Clemson in those two spots. And now you see Clemson already has two conference losses. You have Louisville at 3-0. You have Florida State at 2-0. North Carolina's 1-0 in conference. And then Virginia Tech is technically 1-0 in conference, the only other team in conference that hasn't lost. But it's starting to feel like when you're looking around and you're looking at remaining schedules, you're like, is it going to be one loss that gets you to Charlotte? Is it going to be, can a team get in with two conference losses depending on where those two teams are? And it feels like it's like a 4 or 5 team race right now, and you don't want to be the first one to trip up. And I think that's the best point you made about avoiding the look ahead spot. Like North Carolina's goal should not be just beating Miami. It should be getting to the ACC with the talent that they've kind of displayed this year. And also, you mentioned it, whenever people mention like how few opportunities there actually are, it is kind of crazy to think about. Like, these players are working all year. That's why when people complain about them like dancing in locker rooms or something, I'm like, dude, these kids have like, you have already 12 opportunities, and say you win 8 games, then all of a sudden you have 8 opportunities to go out and celebrate and dance and really enjoy in what you're preparing all this time for. But that is going to take us to our first sponsor today. Inside Carolina podcasts are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. So we want you to go over to johnnytshirt.com or on Franklin Street to support the people that support us. Go ahead and treat yourself or somebody you love to some more Carolina apparel, because you can never have enough. They've got a wide selection of football gear, jerseys, T-shirts, hats, you name it. They've got it at a great affordable price. We have 3 straight home games. It's the perfect time for the Carolina fans to head on over to Franklin Street and check out Johnny T-Shirt. And
I'm gonna be up there for the Miami game. I'm definitely gonna run by Johnny T-Shirt, grab me.
We're gonna have to tell Johnny T-Shirt you're coming by. Maybe we'll do like a little autograph signing, a little meet and greet with Schott.
Nah, my autograph's worthless.
Maybe put some kind of NIL shirt for Schott in the store. But they are locally and alumni owned and operated. It's great people, great prices, and don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders. All right, Jeff, looking at this season, there's an obvious answer. I'm going to let you take it however you want. Who is your offensive MVP so far for this UNC team?
I mean, obviously the easy answer is Drake May, but I'm going to take a different route, and I'm going to say Hampton. Look, he's had 13 plus carries in all 4 games. He's had 7 touchdowns. He started the year for South Carolina. He had 2, mauling red zone touchdown runs. That App State game where he ran wild, and that was kind of his breakout game. And obviously Minnesota, he had some good carries, and it was a mix of him and British, but we were really throwing the ball that game. And Pittsburgh, he looked just as good as he did in App State. He just didn't have as many carries. So Hampton's been kind of the spark that we needed. And I know I was so high on British Brooks after the South Carolina game, but when he went down and, he injured his ankle, Hampton stepped up, and he's going to be our bell cow, running back for the rest of the season. And, he should go over 1,000 yards and have 15 plus touchdowns. So he's been our offensive MVP other than Drake. So we need him to keep running hard and run physical.
Yeah, I'll go with an outside the box pick for my MVP for this team. I'm going to go, looking at the numbers, somebody that's kind of helped out. You don't have Tez Walker. Nate McCullum was sidelined early. There was a lot of question marks at receiver. And J.J. Jones is Carolina's leading receiver, 16 catches, 296 yards, averaging 18.5 yards per catch. He's kind of been that guy for Carolina to be their deep threat. And he has a huge game against Pittsburgh, 117 yards, but he has been pretty solid this entire season, where he goes for 64 yards in the Minnesota game. He goes for 91 yards in the App game. And he's starting to look like a guy that Carolina can count on week in and week out. We talked about it. I think it was last podcast, where the difference between Nate McCullum and Josh Downs is that you know what Josh Downs you're getting every game. There's no surprise there. He's going to give you 90 to 100 plus yards every game because of how consistent he is. And that consistency has been something that this North Carolina team has needed with McCullum and Tez Walker out. And I think J.J. Jones has provided some of that stability. So no touchdowns for J.J. Jones yet. Still waiting for him to get in the end zone. But I do think he does deserve some props for kind of stabilizing this wide receiver core. When we mentioned it our uh, pre-week one podcast how big of a concern the wide receivers were and just how unproven they were with Tez Walker being ineligible. Who would you say has been your biggest surprise on offense?
I'll say J.J. Jones. I was going to go with Willie Lampkin, but he's been injured the last 2 weeks, and he's been great for us. And I think we're going to get him back healthy. But J.J. Jones, man, I think two of the biggest attributes you can have in college football are availability and dependability. And JJ has lined up every game and produced in all 4 games. So he's available. He's making plays. He's making contested catches. He's making downfield catches, and just his development. He's gaining confidence. You could see it in the Pittsburgh game. He catches a couple balls on the sideline. He's talking shit to the Pittsburgh coaching staff, their side. Like, he's got some swag to him, and that's what we need. If we're not going to have Tez Walker, we need a go-getter. We need a dog at receiver, and I think JJ's confidence is only growing, and he's been my surprise of the year so far.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head with that. It was tracking to be Willie Lampkin, and I think that's something that Carolina desperately needs for Willie Lampkin's interior presence. I think you saw Carolina be able to run the ball a lot more efficiently when Willie Lampkin was the one kind of leading the way, and that's been something that's been missing, despite the fact that Carolina keeps winning in a dominant fashion. Who would you? We're 4 games in, the rest of the season. Who would you challenge to step up for this Carolina offense, for Carolina to reach their goals, to win their last game of the season, to get to the ACC championship, to kind of win these in-state games too?
The position group I was so high on in the preseason was the tight end room. And, we've had some production from them, but they kind of haven't lived up to the standards that, of 3 premier ACC players. So I'm going to challenge those guys to step up. And I know Copenhaver's dealt with a little hand injury and, had some injuries, but, Morales and Nesbitt and Copenhaver, it's time for you guys to step up, and they should have over 100 yards combined in every game and at least a touchdown. They produced a little bit, but it's time to take it to the next step. And I think they'll be able to get back healthy and really will implement them in the offense for the rest of the season. So that's my position group that I'm challenging to step up and kind of fulfill their potential.
Yeah, they have just over, those 3 combined have just over 300 receiving yards on 21 catches, and in comparison, Nate McCullum himself has 21 catches, and how much of that is due to Copenhaver playing with a club on his hand. But I do think you're right, where it feels like there is a lot of untapped potential in that room, specifically with somebody like Bryson Nesbitt, who's at 10 catches, 88 yards. And you just see the way that some teams use tight ends in the NFL. And I do think that's a position that Carolina can get a lot more production from. And that's kind of nitpicking because of how good Carolina has been and how important those guys are, not only to the pass game, but also to the run game and in pass pro too. Questions on offense. Where are your biggest question marks? So we talked about the MVPs. We talked about where we want players to kind of step up. Where are your questions on offense?
I think one is can our O-line, can they stay healthy and can they withstand the season? We've only played really 6 guys. With Lampkin out, we had Ed Montilus get in there and play a bunch of snaps, but we really trotted out the same 5 guys the whole season. So can they stay healthy? Can they keep gelling as a unit? And, can we continue to run the ball and pass protect for Drake for the rest of the year? I think that's going to be our, one of the big questions on offense. I think another one is, during the first 4 games with the new offensive coordinator, you kind of work out some play calling kinks and situational football, and what's going to be our short yardage package? What's going to be our goal line package? Are we going to run the wildcat? Are we going to put tight ends in the game and red zone? Like, how are we kind of going to operate? So, that's going to be a question going forward. Is we have had four games to get the kinks out, so let's see how we operate for the rest of the year. Our third down offense has been amazing. I think we're in top 10 in the country. Can we keep, number 2?
Yep.
Wow. Number two, can we
57.9% conversion.
yeah, that's incredible. And a lot of it's, Drake with his legs at times, and he needs to continue to do that. But can we sustain that level of success on third down is going to be huge for us going forward. Um, and then the other thing I'd like to see is some receivers outside of J.J. Jones, Pace Sauer, and Nate McCollum step up, right? Like, I'm not saying from Andre Green or Chapman or Holiday that we need 100-yard games, but we need some flashes of 3 catches for 67 yards, a 40-yard touchdown. We need bits and like spurts of great receiver play from the young guys that aren't playing much, because we run an up tempo fast offense, and those three at the top can't play all the snaps. We got to get some young guys in there to catch some big third down possessions, so can those receivers step up? The three, we know our main three, but can we get some production from the rest of the guys? So, O-line, receiver play, and can we keep our third down offense where it is?
Yeah, that third down offense, I had that stat ready just because it's amazing that Carolina's converting at 57.9% of third downs. You're when you're converting at that kind of number, you're going to win a lot of games because teams just cannot get you off the field. And then I have some of the Pro Football Focus offensive grades. No surprise, leading the way for North Carolina with a grade of 90.6. Drake May. Number 2 for Carolina is Omar in Hampton with an 83.2. The only two Tar Heels graded at 80 or above. Omar in Hampton also an 84.1 in pass blocking.
That's big.
Last year his pass blocking was in the 40s, so to go from in the 40s to an 84.1 is pretty remarkable.
I
Willie
will say
Lampkin,
that part of that is Amari and Hampton, I bet in high school never pass blocked one
no,
time.
no,
One time, he was running the rock, and when they were throwing the ball, he was either catching it or he was out of the game. So,
yeah.
that buffer year, that freshman year to learn how to pass block. So that makes sense.
It's a foreign concept when you come in your freshman year and you're like, wait, I have to stand in here and try to hit
Yeah,
Kareem Martin coming off the edge.
for sure.
Their number 3 graded player on Pro Football Focus is Willie Lampkin, 78.7. Their number 4 is Nate McCollum, wide receiver, 74.4. And then rounding out the top 5, I'll do the top 6 because those are all the guys rated 70 or above. British Brooks, 71.0. So 2 running backs in the top 5. And then J.J. Jones, 70.9. So all guys that we mentioned, and it kind of
That's on
passes
par
the
with our analysis, Vip.
passes the eye test. Those have been the top 6 for Carolina, and why their offense has done as well as their offense has done so far. I do think the offensive line is something to keep an eye on and something to be a bit concerned about for where this team can go and see if they reach their potential. But defensive MVP, who is Schoett's defensive MVP through 4 games?
So I think the easy answer is Cedric Gray. I talk about him so much on this podcast, and he's the heartbeat of the defense. But I'm going to go with Elijah Huzzy. He's completely transformed our secondary. Just in turn, like, look at his stats. So he's got 17 tackles, he's got PBUs, he's got interceptions, he's got punt return for a touchdown. Like, he's just a football player. And the thing that I love about him is his versatility. He's played nickel some this year, he's played outside corner, but just his ability first of all, his ball skills are incredible. Some of the best I've seen as a DB. Some of the best plays he makes are just contesting balls and not getting PIs, which we've seen so much out of our UNC
Yeah.
DBs in the past couple of years. The big one is the one to end the App State game, in overtime, where they throw it up and he's in perfect body position and plays the hands of the receiver and has the PBU that wins the game. And Huzzy completely transformed and changed that Pitt game, with his 2 punt returns and then his big PBU on third down. So that guy just allows our secondary to do different things. And he looks like an NFL player, and he's our best DB we've had since MJ Stewart in 2015. So keep it up, Elijah, because you're doing your thing, bro.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. He brings that kind of dog mentality to the defense, and watching him, like, I love going to the games just because you don't get the TV view and you can kind of see the full 22, and just watching him over and over either lock down a person or, you know, get beat and then get back into recovering and still making a play. Or the one of the plays I the first one of the first plays I remember him making in the South Carolina game, he comes up, he blows up like a bubble screen type
I think it was
play.
the first play of the year.
Yeah. And then I think on that third down, he comes out of nowhere, has the pass breakup, and gets Carolina off the field. And I remember turning to somebody and being like, we I don't think we've had a DB like this in quite a while. So I agree with you. Huzzy would be my defensive MVP so far. Who would you say has been the biggest surprise on defense?
I'm going to go with Kamen Rucker. We always knew he was a good talent, but he's been completely disruptive, and he's changed the game at times. Obviously the South Carolina game, he comes out on fire with 5 tackles for loss and 2 or 3 sacks, whatever it is. But he's been a force, a mainstay in the run defense and the pass rush. He's been our probably our most definitely our most productive defensive lineman. He's playing a bunch of snaps. I bet he's played 75-80% of the snaps as a defensive lineman. So he's been a huge surprise. He looks like a NFL player. His motor, his versatility, and we're finally playing him to his strengths. He's a beast in the run game. He uses his leverage really well because he's a shorter guy. He gets into the offensive tackles, center of gravity, and then around the edge when he's pass rushing, like he's got some quickness and some burst, and he's hard to block. So he's been our big surprise, and he'll be a first or second team All ACC guy at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I know it was true before the bye week, but I would imagine it's still, he still ranks among the best. I think he was top 5 pressures generated this year for defensive players, and just seeing the consistency that he has week in and week out is something that I think more players for this Carolina team should look to replicate, because we don't go into a game wondering what we're going to get from K'Mon Rucker. You turn on that film and he is going to be in the backfield more often than not. We talked about players we wanted to challenge to step up offensively with the tight ends. Who are your players that you would want to challenge defensively?
So I think our kind of weakness as a defense has been our interior defensive line play. And so I'm going to challenge Miles Murphy and Ritzy. Those are 2 highly recruited guys. They've been at Carolina for 3 years now, and they played a lot of football. We see them flash, their potential at times, but it's time for them to step up and be a mainstay in our defense. Those guys got to anchor. They're playing 3 technique mostly, which is over the guards, and we got to get some disruption out of them. Des Evans has come along a lot, so I'm happy with his play. But 2 guys that I really want to see step up are those 2-3 techniques that we got that are highly recruited kids. They got talent. I think it's just the consistency of them playing down in and down out and making plays. So let's see some production out of those guys.
Yeah, and the other thing with Des Evans is when you watch him on film, like his motor's unbelievable.
Plays his ass off. He plays harder than anyone on defense. Him and Power Eccles are the standard for playing
Every
hard.
snap. You're like, his motor it's incredible to watch, and he should be getting rewarded with more sacks just off his motor alone. But there were times this year in the Minnesota game for sure where if you're the other coach, you're telling your quarterback, hey, live with the sack. If Des Evans is in your face, about to bring you down, live with the sack. Don't just throw the ball up. A lot of the passes that have been picked off, Carolina has gotten to the quarterback, and the quarterbacks are just making these ill-advised throws. And if you're Carolina, you live with that because of the play that you're getting from the back end from players like Elijah Huzzy, who are in position to take these interceptions or take these ducks that quarterbacks are just throwing up. But yeah, Des Evans, it's hard to complain about any of the production that Des Evans has given this Carolina team. Before we finish the podcast with a new segment, where are your questions on defense?
So my questions are kind of, can we keep this up? My biggest challenge and what I, said in the preseason podcast was, last year I think we gave up, 35, 37, 39 points a game on defense. Can we get below the 25 mark? And I think we're at 22 right now. And the thing that I love seeing is our second half defense. I think we're averaging 7.5 points per game in the second half of our games. That's winning football. That tells me that our guys are, first half that the offenses might come out and run something a little bit different. They have some nuances that are different than they've shown on film, but we're getting those mistakes corrected and we're going into halftime and we are fixing them. So that shows some maturity from our defense. And I'd like to see some more turnovers, more sacks, but our numbers are pretty good through the first 4 games. I think if you extrapolate it to the 12-game mark, they're probably top 50 in the country. My kind of question mark is, I think, which DBs are we going to see, play the majority of the snaps going forward? Everyone had high hopes for Stick Lane and Hardy, coming into the season, and now they're finally healthy and we're kind of throwing them out there and they're getting more snaps. So are we going to see those 2 safeties play a lot more? Because I think we should play them. I think Biggers and Chapman, they're reliable players. They're smart. They know what to do, but they're not playmakers. So I think, going forward, are we going to see more snaps from Lane and Chapman? Lane and Hardy at safety. Are we gonna have Chapman play more corner? Because when he played, he looked good at times. I know we got Holloway and Derek Allen who've played well. Marcus Allen, I'm sorry. So kind of my question mark is what's going to be the defensive back rotation for the last half of the season. But and then I guess the other thing is, Bo Atkinson has showed out to me, in the limited snaps he's gotten, he's been a force and he plays with high energy and he's been productive. So is he going to get more snaps? Are we going to finally get Travis Shaw over the hump? Because he's played a little bit more, but he hasn't been productive. So kind of like, as the midpoint of the season approaches and these guys are getting snaps, well, it's time for them to produce. So, kind of my question is, and also third down defense. We've been pretty good on third down defense. The stat, Vipp? What are we? Top 50
I will
in the
check
country,
it.
maybe?
You fill for a second, and I'll check.
Look, if we can keep our third down defense and our scoring defense in the top 50 in the country, then we are going to be playing Florida State in the ACC championship. That is a fact. So that's kind of my question mark for the second half of the season is just, can we continue to play pretty good situational defense? Can we
52nd?
52nd? We can live with that. I mean, hopefully we'll move up into the 30s as the season goes on, but we can win with 33, 34, 35% on third down. We're playing pretty good red zone defense at times. We're playing pretty good situational defense at times. The thing that I've loved about our defense is how we've come out when our back's against the wall, when our offense turns the ball over, or a sudden change happens. So I love that out of our defense, because I know Coach Chiswick has always preached that control the things that you can control, and when another group on the field makes a mistake, then we got to control what we can, and we can only defend what we have to. So those are kind of my questions, and I'm proud of the defense through the first 4 games. Only giving up 22 points a game on average, and we played some really good football at times.
Yeah, 52nd third down defense, and then 46th for scoring defense. And I think one of the things that those numbers don't take into account that they should take into account is through Carolina's 4 games, they've played 3 Power 5 opponents. Like the amount of teams that have played 3 Power 5 opponents is probably very low right now, when you have, the Bethune-Cookmans and whoever other teams are playing right now. That was a shot. That was a shot at Miami. And
yeah, damn.
But yeah, Carolina has been tested with opponents, and their defense is holding strong. And I do think it's encouraging where those second half numbers that you mentioned, that those numbers are really impressive, and it shows that not only do the guys respond well to what they're being told to do, the coaches have a game plan. And I think there has been like maybe it's a vocal minority of fans, but a vocal minority of fans who have the criticism real loud for Coach Chizik, but then at the same time they can't give him credit when the defense is doing well, and the defense does have those adjustments to where, like, if you're complaining about what the defense has done through 4 games, we're watching a completely different brand of football, because the team I'm watching is they might struggle the first 2 drives as they're figuring out what teams are doing to them, because I think that's another thing people fail to realize, that the team that you're playing is also a Power 5 team with also 90 scholarships and guys that are getting recruited, and a coaching staff that's trying to win games. But, outside of those opening drives, this Carolina defense has been trending in the right direction. And just the fact that we're talking about a scoring defense, or really any defensive number in the top half of college football through 4 games, kind of shows that. But that brings us to this last segment, and it is our pick of the weekend, and it's presented by our friends. If you're watching on YouTube, you see their logo in the bottom right corner, our friends at Congruity. They are North Carolina based, national coverage, local presence, personal support straight from the Tar Heel State, and they are empowering small and mid-sized business owners with HR and payroll outsourcing, enabling you to grow your business while they take care of your greatest assets, your people. And they are doing it with top of the line technology, services for every stage of your business's growth, with a state of the art online platform. And the people at Congruity are obsessed with customer service. They become part of your team. They do the heavy lifting, providing essential admin support with a single point of contact, and support available on demand with services that are tailor-made. They are transforming organizations, and Congruity has helped hundreds of businesses improve and enhance their day-to-day lives. Level up your HR capabilities, save money, and unlock game-changing growth. Visit congruityhr.com/Tar Heels, because remember, they are Tar Heels too, to learn more about Congruity. You can fill out a quick form to be connected to their consultants, and they'll give Inside Carolina listeners or viewers a payroll and HR assessment for free. That's congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. So, Jeff, the way Congruity makes it easier for businesses, we want to make it easier for the gamblers out there. So we both like the sports gambling aspect. We love looking at spreads and trying to figure out what are the best lines. Maybe we don't have the most success, and maybe that's why we're doing this segment, because we want some accountability with our records. And
For sure.
There's nothing better than when somebody tells you a pick and then you have that shared experience.
Yep.
And you win together, you lose together. Hopefully you win more than you lose, and hopefully you bet responsibly. But who is your pick this weekend? And to mention, UNC is -8.5 at home against Cuse if you want it, but the entire board is yours. We don't have to get rich on one game.
I'm not going to pick the UNC game this week just because I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Look, this is a game this weekend that I don't care if we cover. I just care that we win. We could win by 3, 6, 5, 7. It doesn't matter. I think this is a game that we just got to win. My pick of the week is going to be shout out my guy Prime out in Colorado. I'm going to go Colorado -4. They play Arizona State, and I've just been really impressed with Colorado and Shedeur Sanders and those weapons, those young weapons they have on offense. And their defense gets run through a little bit, and it's okay. I think Colorado's going to outscore them, and they showed some heart in the second half versus USC. So I'm going to ride with them this week, and Colorado -4 is my pick of the week.
Yeah, at Arizona State. Arizona State has lost 4 straight games. They lost to Oklahoma State. They lost to Fresno State. They lost to USC. They lost to Cal. They lost 29-0. at home to Fresno State. So the home field atmosphere must not be good in Tempe, Arizona. And they're also suspended from the postseason this year. So it's not even like those players are like, hey, maybe we can get to 6 wins. If you get to 6 wins, does not matter. I like that thought, Shedeur Sanders. And
I think those players are already looking forward to the pool parties in the springtime with that's what I think. They just like telling people they're on the football team so they can get, free access to these pool parties. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I love that Colorado offense, and I love everything that Prime has kind of done for Colorado. I'm going to stay in the Pac-12. So both our games are in the Pac-12. Neither is the night game. So you don't have to worry about, putting a bet in for a 10 o'clock game and then waking up in the morning and seeing how it did. That Colorado game is 6:30 Eastern time. I'm going Washington State is playing at UCLA. UCLA is -3.5. I am going to fade the Cougs. I actually love the Cougs. I think they're awesome. Cam Ward is their quarterback. He's kind of revitalized their offense. Their head coach, Jake Dickert, has kind of taken this nobody wants us approach, and it's kind of rallied his team to where Washington State is a top 15 team with big wins at Oregon State, and they also won when Wisconsin was ranked. They're one of the few teams that are one of 25 teams, including Carolina, that are still undefeated entering this week for college football. But I see -3.5 against a top 15 team. I think this is a big spot for Chip Kelly. They have a true freshman quarterback, Dante Moore. They're coming off a tough loss they're coming off of their only loss of the year at Utah, which was a defensive battle, 14-7. They've had a week to prepare off the bye. I've got the Bruins -3.5. So those are our picks. Take them. Don't hold us accountable. If you want to bet with us, bet with us. If you don't want to bet, if you want to fade us and that makes you happy, do whatever you want. But we'll come back next week, recap how we did. I feel like we both have winners on our hands, and we're going to be coming back. We're going to be coming back the Donald Duck counting cash meme. But Shot, that's all we got this week. A good episode coming off the bye. Carolina kicks off 3:30. It's the ESPN game, I want to say. Yep, the ESPN game, 3:30 kickoff. Back in Kenan Stadium, hosting Syracuse, number 14, UNC, an 8.5-point favorite. The weather right now on my app says 73 degrees and sunny. So it could not be better in Chapel Hill. If you're going to be there, looking forward to seeing you. It's going to be a great one. Shot, man, appreciate the time as always. And thank you to everybody who's listened or watched.
Always appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Vipp.